Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Blitz Sports Media. I'm Ryan Lincoln, and I'm back with my co-host Brady Penn. We are on the Blitz angle, and we're here on Blitz Sports Media, back with a Week 15 overreactions video. Man, Brady, we had a good week games. Honestly, I thought there were going to be more games that lived up to the hype, but honestly, a lot of one-sided contests early on. We saw some really bad football in the 12 o'clock slate or 1 o'clock for you Eastern time people like Brady. And then we had two great matchups in the next slot of games that honestly were one-sided throughout the whole entire contest. Brady, what are your initial takeaways from Week 15?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot about a good amount of teams. I mean, we learned a lot about the Eagles. I feel like we learned a lot about the Bills, and then we have some teams that we have newfound questions about, such as the Chargers, even the Lions. I mean, the Chiefs. The Chiefs did not play a clean game today, and now we'll see how the Mahomes ankle thing looks. I mean, we've seen him bounce back from an ankle injury on multiple occasions before, but it was a good day of football, and I think that the pack is starting to separate for the most part between contenders and pretenders. And then obviously we have the teams like the Patriots and everybody else that were already out of this thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the headline from this week. I mean, honestly, the playoff picture is locked up in my mind. I think in the AFC, we have our 7 teams. The Dolphins, Colts, all lost today. I know the Bengals have some crazy hope of making it with 8 losses. That's not going to happen. I mean, their defense still looked abysmal today against the Titans. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the NFC side of things, the Seahawks, who knows how long Geno Smith is out? They're not going to have a chance if Sam Howell's their quarterback, considering the schedule they have. And then the Rams are on fire as of late. They now have the division lead in the NFC West. And then obviously the 3 wildcard teams are slotted in there after the Commanders win. So the playoff picture is filled up right now. Let's talk about the headline game of the week. Bills versus Lions. Brady, what are your takeaways from the Bills' big win over the Lions?
I think Josh Allen locked up the MVP today. And it's funny because honestly, if he had lost, put up a bad performance or anything like that, Lamar had a chance to climb back into the race, be right in the thick of it again with the performance he had today. I know it was the Giants, but 5 touchdowns and an elite performance with some really good throws from Lamar. And I even saw a tweet before the Bills game that Josh Allen, if he lost and had a bad performance, it was right neck and neck, and Lamar could steal the MVP back. But I think over 400 total yards against the number 2 defense, which did have some things exposed today. 13 touchdowns in his last 3 games. Josh Allen literally feels unstoppable right now. One of the only times they got stopped, 2 of the drives, they got a missed field goal. And then I think they ended up getting a field goal on the drive where Allen had a touchdown on a phenomenal play call, but it got called back due to a hold.
Yeah, and one of my biggest takeaways from this matchup was the Detroit Lions defense. Brady, this unit's not the same. The injuries have caught up to them over the last 3 weeks. We've seen this unit regress. It started in the second half against the Bears. The Packers took it to them in the second half last week. And then this week they put up an abysmal showing against the Buffalo. But I mean, they showed no resistance today. There was zero resistance at all from the defensive side of the ball from the Lions. And it's concerning. You just can't rely on a winning shootouts in postseason ball. It never works. Shout out Angel. Welcome to the chat today. But I just can't rely on a team that has no defense in the postseason. You rarely see teams make it far that don't have a defense. And I think the Lions, I know they've been great so far to start the season. I don't think they have a top half of the postseason defenses right now with the current guys they have healthy. Allen McNeil and Carlton Davis could be out for the season. Who knows? I mean, that defense could be really bad here. Offensively, though, slow start got them. You know, they after that slow start and they got in a pass happy game script, they still scored, what was it, 42 points, which is great. Like you can't complain about that by any means, but the slow start hurt them there. And on the Bills side of things, Josh Allen's going nuclear the last 2 weeks. Josh Allen is playing the best football of his career, and the big reason is they have the best offensive line they've had with Josh Allen at quarterback, and that's definitely helped them out. I don't know if you've noticed, but they like this play where Allen rolls out to his right or his left, and they have a lineman who stands there and acts like a wall. I don't know if you've noticed that. They just stand there with their arms up. Allen rolls behind him. It's working really well. So I've never seen another team do it, and Bills are cooking a little bit.
Yeah, I will say, like I've always said and still do believe, like Patrick Mahomes may be the best at extending the play that I've ever seen. But at this point, Josh Allen is right there with him. I mean, the way that Josh Allen gets outside of the pocket and just patiently waits back there, he'll like be right on the sideline, just waiting, chuck it up deep.
Allen has like the same animation every time he does it too.
Yeah, and it feels like every throw right now is like pinpoint too. There were like 4 or 5 big down lasers. There was one to Knox. There were ones down the field to running backs. And I mean, Josh Allen, like, he has full confidence in all of these guys. He got Coleman back today. We'll see if he gets back into the swing of things. We know he loves Shakir, but Ty Johnson out of the backfield looked like a wide.
That was crazy.
And
that goes to show you how great Joe Brady is, though. Like
100%.
Finding the matchup that's weak on the Lions defense, attacking that with Ty Johnson, who's basically been a nobody in his career.
I literally feel like Josh Allen right now is unstoppable. And I don't know what's going to happen come January if the Bills will finally be able to take this thing all the way. We will see. But, I mean, Josh Allen, he's unsackable right now. He literally does not take sacks. He extends the play perfectly. Every throw is on point. His deep throws are on the money. He's not turning the ball over. Like, he's running the ball great still. I don't know how you stop him in this offense right now. You just literally have to put up a bunch of points and hope that you can score enough on this defense. And a couple of things when it comes to what the Lions did offensively against that Bills defense. For one, I don't think the Bills defense is elite, and I never have. I do still think they're good, and I think today
we've been on this, though. We've been saying this the whole year. The Bills defense was a little bit inflated due to some of their matchups.
I do think, though, like, this game was still close. This game was never in question to me, and that fourth quarter was glorified garbage time for Jared Goff. I mean, they couldn't get a stop at all, and Goff threw the ball 30 times in the fourth quarter today with 200-something yards in the fourth quarter. They were playing catch-up ball. Bills were playing softer defense, and the Bills came out firing on defense. I mean, they held the Lions to 3 and out their first 2 drives. They were getting pretty consistent pressure. I mean, they gave up a few fluke plays, hook and ladder type plays to the Lions, and I think that last week was really bad. The scoreboard will say this week was really bad, and it wasn't great, but I want to say that they improved off of last week despite what the scoreboard says, and the Lions, I'm not sure they really had a 42-point type outing today.
Yeah, but Vic, shout out to you in the comments section here. Josh Allen is more athletic than Patrick Mahomes. I think we can all agree on that one. He also says Allen is a Cam Newton comp just based off his athleticism alone. And I agree. He's a hard guy to bring down. We constantly see them use him in short yardage situations, design runs. It's crazy. Dude is the most durable quarterback in the NFL despite taking the most hits in the NFL basically every season.
Away from the contact.
He's an alien, bro. He's an alien. He refuses to get hurt. What do you say?
I said I have a question. Some people say this is premature to say this, and I'm not even saying he's the best right now, but to me, I know I didn't grow up in the 80s. I didn't grow up in the 90s. I feel like Josh Allen is already one of the 10 best quarterbacks to ever play, and we'll see if he can add.
That might be a hot take right now.
I'm going with it. I don't care. To me, if he's not the best dual threat we've seen, he's a top 2 dual threat we've seen. He's an absolute alien throwing the ball, and all it's missing is just to get a Lombardi or 2, and I think he's in that conversation because when you think about it, if you're starting a franchise with every quarterback in history to pull from, are you taking John Elway over him? I'm not. I'm taking Josh Allen. Are you taking I don't know. I'm not.
I feel like a lot of people, though, we never got to watch Elway, and that's where they're like.
I don't even know. I think it's going to get to a point when Allen's at the end of his career that we can put him over Rodgers. Like we can put him over Breeze at the end of his career, maybe. Like we'll see how it goes. There's a long way to go, but to me,
longevity thing with him,
100%. And I just think, in my time watching football back from 2011, he's easily one of the best that I've watched with my own eyes. The only ones that I can really significantly say were without a doubt better are Brady, Mahomes so far, and Peyton.
Yeah, David Caleb Gonzalez in the chat. Kudos to Josh Allen. He had a rough season narrative-wise to where we question successful the team was going to be, but he has really perfected his craft to have quarterback. Definitely number 2 in the league right now. I think you're cooking, David. I mean, we always used to talk about Josh Allen had accuracy problems. When was the last time we've heard that? It's been a long time. Josh Allen had turnover problems. Dude is not putting the ball in harm's way very often this season. He continues to get better. He's an elite talent, and he's surrounded by a great offensive unit with a great offensive coordinator. Josh Allen's playing great football, really good football player, and like you mentioned, that top 10, I'm not willing to go that far yet. David says he does need that ring. I'm not going to say he needs a ring, but I think if he keeps up this level of play for another, 28, maybe 10 seasons, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. He's a elite level talent. I don't think he needs a ring. I don't think he needs a ring to get in.
We'll see. I mean, if he were to get MVP and ring and pull a Mahomes and double dip this year, I think it could do a lot for his legacy and in terms of dispelling some of these casual narratives of some people tend, I'm sorry, we're going on a bit of a Josh Allen tangent here, but people tend to think that just because the Bills have not made it far enough in the postseason that it's been Allen's fault. But that's just not true. Look at the 13-second game. That's not on Allen. He played a phenomenal game. Mahomes was just also amazing. Look at last year's Chiefs game. Tyler Bass sold the team from tying the ball game up. Allen played phenomenal in that one too. I think that there are some unfair narratives about him, even with the turnovers. We've talked about how the turnover numbers completely drop when it comes to the playoffs with Allen. He's a lot more calculated, and I just think that he has a chance to put an end to a lot of those, especially if he gets an MVP and people start talking about he doesn't have an MVP. He has no accolades. It's year 7. He can change that all.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see kind of where Allen goes from here. Let's talk about Angel's tweet here because I got a lot to rant about today. Mahomes benefits from scheme. Put Allen in Reid's system and watch what happens. I'm just going to say this right now. I am absolutely disgusted by the offensive coaching staff right now in Kansas City. What I watched today was one of the worst performances on offense I've seen in the Mahomes era. And that includes the Raiders game last year. That includes all these different games that we've seen over the past 7 years now with Mahomes at quarterback. They were pressured, Brady, 54% of dropbacks. And they were up 21 points in this one. And you know what they did? They did in the second half? They threw the ball 8 straight times for 8 straight incompletions. 0 runs. 0. And then nothing was schemed open. Nothing. It was disgusting. Mahomes looked horrible. Reid was horrible. I don't know how much Nagy. I don't buy into the fact that Nagy has a big enough role to where he's Andy Reid. It's Andy Reid. It's a horrible game plan this season. And honestly, last season was frustrating as well in this department. The postseason, they obviously switched things up really good, and they look completely different. And you know what? They'll probably be similar this year. But it's so frustrating to watch this offense on a weekly basis. They don't block well. Mahomes looks like a shell of himself. It looks like he's trying to be Alex Smith out there. The offensive game plan is disgusting. It's trap powers, really slow out routes, and the stupidest schemed up deep balls on 3rd and short when you could take a guy underneath. It's just really bad football right now, and it's just frustrating to watch because the only reason Patrick Mahomes hurt his ankle is because Andy Reid is asking him to drop back up 2-3 scores, and he's getting hit every single play. We talked about this weekend. How many hits is it going to take for Patrick Mahomes to get hurt? And what do you know? Rolls his ankle up in a 4th down play. What's your take right now on the Chiefs offense?
I do think that Mahomes escaped. I don't think this is going to be a major injury. We'll see.
No, I don't think so either.
This weekend at home against the Texans, which actually it is interesting. Does Vegas know something about the injury just for this week that we don't? Because as soon as his injury happened, the line shifted from Texans by 3 to Texans by 6.5, apparently, is what I saw on Twitter. And, apparently, that was a tweet that I saw. I would have to fact check that. Maybe it's not true, but
I'll look that up while you cook right now.
That's what I read. But with this offense, man, I don't know if they're going to pull this together before the playoffs. And everybody has different definitions of pull it together. Maybe they can do enough to go on a run like they did last year with the defense just going berserk. But honestly, even the defense right now, they played well today. Some of it was Brown's offensive ineptitude. But do we think that this defense has another 12 points per game allowed postseason run in them to where they can cover up this offense's weakness? I mean, remember, it's easy to forget because the Chiefs did end up winning, but they went 10 or 11 straight drives last postseason without a touchdown, and the defense kept them afloat. And I don't know if I can count on that happening 2 years in a row. And another thing that I can't count on happening 2 years in a row, usually this team that wins the Super Bowl, you see them with momentum in December. You see them heating up and starting to come into playoff form the last few weeks of the season. We do not see that with the Chiefs right now. And the reason that you can't count them out, even despite that, is because we didn't see that last year. You remember the Christmas game? They had a shaky first half against the Bengals the next week and then came out with a win, and then they rested the starters. They weren't blazing hot coming into the playoffs, and they were able to get it done. But I don't know if I can count on that happening 2 years in a row. I don't know if Hollywood Brown will move the needle enough with this offense and all of the issues they have, coaching, offensive line, Mahomes with his own issues. Kelsey's not the same explosive player he was. I feel like this Chiefs team is on borrowed time right now, and I think that the 13-1 record is not a full summation of who they are. I don't think you can rule them out. I think they're still going to be the toughest out in the playoffs this year. They have the experience, they have the quarterback, they have the coach, they have the defense. But I think it's fair to have 2 or 3 teams ahead of them in terms of who you think is likely to win this whole thing.
Yeah, I think at least power rank. I think going into the playoffs, regardless, I think I'll have the Chiefs at 1 because they've done it. And then I think the rest of the regular season, I'm going to have them around that 4 and 5 range in my power rankings because they're not the top team in the NFL. I have the Bills, Eagles, and Lions all over them right now because they're all playing better. Despite the Chiefs' record, they're not playing good football. And so you mentioned the line; it started at -4 and it's now +2.5. For that,
Also,
honestly,
6.5, not favored by 6.5. It moved 6.5.
So, I mean, I might get on that a little bit value because what I was interested to see if the Bills lost. Oh, if the Bills lost, the Chiefs were going to probably not play Mahomes this week.
I agree.
They wouldn't have even risked it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him this week. I mean, Carson Wentz, dude, this is the frustrating part about Andy Reid is Carson Wentz, right? 2 of his dropbacks were just wide open, scheme perfect throws on 2nd and 3rd down. I'm sitting there like, why can't we just have this simple throws for Mahomes? But no, it has to be some stupid play where they're forcing something.
One other thing I want to talk about is, well, I have 2 points here, but the first is why is as you as a Chiefs fan, I want to ask you what your take on this is because I haven't been able to put a reason to it. These last 2 years, why has Mahomes' deep ball just become so inaccurate? Like it feels, especially in 2024 alone, just incredibly rare for him to connect on a deep pass.
So this is what it is. Okay. As a pitcher, I completely understand what the guy's going through. Patrick Mahomes has the yips on deep balls. That's what it is. That's all it is. He has the yips. Last year, right? You had drops. You had plays that he was hitting like Patrick Mahomes would that just wouldn't happen. And then he would have to check it down underneath. It changed everything. And going into this year, they had such a big emphasis on the deep ball with Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, Rashee Rice. Like that's a solid trio right there considering where they all are right now. But they didn't have that to start the year. They had Xavier Worthy who had yet to play an NFL game. And they still wanted to push the ball deep. It didn't work out early on. And at this point, Mahomes is yipped up. He doesn't have confidence in the deep ball. His mechanics change every time he throws a deep ball. And at this point, they're forcing it. Like the 3rd and 2 call on a deep pass to Justin Watson when Xavier Worthy's doing a drag right across your face. Like that is a forced deep ball just saying like, all right, it's a regular season game. I'm going to chuck a deep ball, try to get the deep ball going. It never works out. It's really frustrating. And he just has the yips right now. It's just, he has the yips.
I also want to ask you, so I saw someone talking about this on Twitter. Obviously, back after the 2020 season, we saw teams start moving to this too high look and just preventing the deep balls and everything like that. And Reid and company in 2021, 2022, more so in 2022, and especially last year, started taking more advantage in the short to intermediate areas. And now all of a sudden, it just doesn't look like that's working this year. Do you think that teams are catching on and making another adjustment to Andy Reid's adjustment?
I don't think teams are necessarily catching on. I think the Chiefs are just bad at what they do. And I think it makes it easier for like there is something about the blitz. Like Mahomes is one of the best players against the blitz all time. This season, It hasn't been the same thing. Like there's not people open underneath. You're right. Defenses are making adjustments and Mahomes just hasn't been as good this season. So it's been a struggle. What I will say with the Chiefs though, they will not bring this roster back next year. This team is going to be a completely different retool. They're going to retool this whole roster next year. And I guarantee you they trade for either a big left tackle or they make a big move to go get a left tackle because I don't think they're going to sit back there and watch Mahomes get hit this much like he did this year.
The one guy that they have to bring back, in my opinion, to have a chance at a ring next year, regardless of if they get one this year or not, is Trey Smith. And I think Trey Smith is one of the 3 most valuable Chiefs on the roster right now. Every time they have a big run play, anytime they have just an effort where they need a push, it feels like I see Trey Smith in the middle of it. We saw him today. There was a run where I think Pacheco or Hunt was just stopped a couple yards short of the sticks, and Trey Smith literally just bear hugged him and pulled him forward past the marker. And I think this interior O-line is literally the only thing keeping this offense alive right now with Humphrey, Tooney, who I know is at tackle today, and Smith. I think those 3 are phenomenal all-pro level talents, and we'll see what happens. But just to close out on the Chiefs, next 3 games, they're all against really good pass rushing teams. You've got Mahomes on that gimp ankle right now, and I know that none of these 3 teams necessarily have juggernaut offenses that you're scared of just running up the points on you, but next week, and you've got Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. The week after that, you've got TJ Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig. And then after that, you've got the Broncos and Nick Bonito, who, for my money, is going to be an all-pro. I think Nick Bonito, he had a pick 6 today. He consistently gets in the backfield. Not a guy we even knew really before the season, but I think he's an all-pro level guy. And these are 3 tough challenges in a row for a team that's desperately trying to clinch up that home field at Arrowhead.
I'll close with this. I guarantee you, Brady, if Patrick Mahomes plays this week, it'll be the best Chiefs offensive performance of the season. You know why?
Why is that?
Because Andy Reid is going to be forced to actually cook up plays that don't put him in harm's way. And I actually think it's going to work. I've watched this team for so long, and it doesn't make sense when this offense starts clicking. And this is the type of game where Mahomes is hurt and they'll figure stuff out because they had to develop a whole new game plan versus the crappy offense they've been running since week 1. Let's talk about that game, though, of the Steelers and Eagles. Chiefs obviously face the Steelers here in 2 weeks. The Eagles dominated this one, Brady. Very impressive win from them. Steelers offense a little fraudulent, as we expected.
Yeah.
No George Pickens definitely didn't help. And TJ Watt now injured with an ankle injury. It looks like it's a low ankle sprain, so who knows? He could be like Mahomes and play this week too. We'll see what happens. But what are your takeaways from the Eagles' big win? And now, hey, they're tied now with Detroit.
I should have stuck to my convictions more in the fact that the Steelers are not like that. I drink a little bit of the Kool-Aid, especially.
Oh, you drank that Arthur Smith Kool-Aid.
Defense. No, it wasn't even that. It was mostly the defense, and I thought that they would be able to bottle up Saquon more than other teams, which, to be fair, Saquon did not have the game that he has the last few weeks, but A.J. Brown talked about
Smith.
We talked about the chemistry thing. We talked about Jalen Brown, different sport. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, they got on the same page today. A.J. Brown had 11 targets. He got the target share. He had over 100 yards. He got in the end zone early on, and that is what I wanted to see. And Jalen Hurts said it in his post-game press conference. First thing he said to the media was, that's what y'all wanted to see? And yes, Jalen, that's 100% what we wanted. And, I mean, this is just a pretty dominant game without the scoreboard saying it was dominant, but the Steelers offense couldn't get anything rolling. And I'm ready to say, I think that the Ravens are going to win this division. I think they're going to beat the Steelers this Saturday. I think they're going to take that division lead. I don't think they're going to look back, and it'll end up being the Ravens as the AFC North champions, as we predicted all along. I started to have my doubts after that 3-week stretch where they lost to Philly and Pittsburgh, but after what I saw today and just how hard it is to beat Lamar Jackson multiple times in 1 year, I'm going with the Ravens and the Ravens winning this division. And that's going to put the Steelers in a position where they have to go maybe to Houston. And that's not a guaranteed win. I think I would lean towards the Steelers right now, but that's not a guaranteed win. And that's another team that did impress me today that I have not been impressed with in a while was the Houston Texans.
Yeah, the Texans did play good. We'll talk about that one actually next. What I will say with the Steelers, this offense just misses a playmaker. I know George Pickens is a great deep threat, and Russell Wilson and him have been great. They have nobody that works in the middle of the field explosively. I know Pat Freiermuth is technically that guy for them, but they have nobody that works the middle of the field well. They have nobody that gets chunk plays yak. I mean, Cordero Patterson's their best guy with the ball in his hands, which is crazy.
You mentioned Deebo as a Steeler. If that was the role they put him in, I could actually see him having a bit of success.
They need a playmaker on offense. They just don't have that guy right now. And that's kind of why that we see these performances where it looks ugly. It's not explosive. It's kind of like the Chiefs. It's basically like the Chiefs, although they have players that can do that, but they're not there yet. But on the Steelers side of things, the defense didn't show up today. The secondary wasn't elite by any means. They did good against the ground game. But, I mean, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown went off in this one. Jalen Hurts had a nice day. And you're right. I am concerned right now.
Jacob, no, I was actually just complimenting Jalen Hurts. I was actually putting his flowers and saying,
this is the chat, Jacob.
This is what we needed to see from the Eagles. So shout out to Jay Hurts. Shout out to the Eagles. I do still think the Lions are getting that 1 seed. But
I will say, though, I agree 100%, though. The Ravens are taking this division. It's going to start this week. They're going to be tied up. I don't know who would have the tiebreaker based on, I think, division record. It might just be Pittsburgh.
They both have 2 losses.
I got no clue. We'll see what happens.
The Ravens beat the Bengals twice. They lost to the Browns once, and they lost to the Steelers once. The Steelers lost to the Browns once, and in this situation, in this case, if this happens, they'll have a loss to the Ravens and the Browns both. So then it probably goes to conference record, which I don't know.
Who knows? But I think schedule-wise, the Ravens have the easier schedule down the stretch. compared to the Steelers. And I think both teams drop another game at least this season, but I think the Ravens wind up taking it home just due to the schedule-wise. But Vic is cooking, though, today. He's cooking in the chat. The Eagles are going to be a problem in the NFC. The Lions' defense is vulnerable.
Of course, he's a ball knower. He's a Brady chat guy.
Is he a Brady chat guy? Yeah, no, he's cooking. He is cooking. Listen, the Eagles are a very deep team. I don't really see a weakness on this roster except for their head coach, and that's where it gets concerning come playoff time. Is coaching is one of the most important factors. And on the Lions side of things, great offensive coach. I guess a good defensive coach. I don't buy into the Aaron Glenn hype like some people have. Dan Campbell's a solid coach. And what I will say is the Eagles have the team to defeat the Lions. An elite front seven. They have very good cornerbacks. The slot corner is a little bit concerning with Cooper DeJean facing Amon-Ra. That definitely is a matchup that could be interesting right there. But I really do think they have the defense to slow down the Lions. And offensively, I mean, like Vivek mentioned, the Lions defense is vulnerable. Saquon Barkley could have himself a day based on what we saw with Ty Johnson and James Cook.
To me, it just comes down to if a team can stop Saquon. I don't care. I know that Jacob's not going to like this, but if a team forces Jalen Hurts to beat them in the playoffs, I don't think he can do it. I know we saw him do it a little bit, kind of, with Shane Steichen. I do think they played Daniel Jones and the Giants and then Josh Johnson after Brock Purdy went out. But I don't know if I trust Jalen Hurts to shoulder the load and just will a team to victory. On that same note, though, I don't know if I trust Jared Goff to do that. And if there are two guys in this NFC playoff field that I'm picking to do that, it's Matthew Stafford and Baker Mayfield, in all honesty.
Oh, here we go.
And I don't think the Bucs are a Super Bowl team or anything like that. One thing I will say about Tampa Bay, I think there's a good chance if they are at home and host Minnesota, I think the Bucs would win that game. I think I would take the Bucs. They're getting healthier. They've got Cade Otton, Bucky Irving. Mike Evans looked really good today. He's getting healthier. They've got Godwin out there. Baker has been great all season long, and the defense is starting to play better. I mean, they frustrated.
Let's actually talk about that game real quick. This was the most impressive Bucs performance we've gotten. More impressive than the Lions win early on this season. I mean, the Chargers came in as the number one scoring defense. I know they haven't played the best competition this season, but their defense is legit. We have seen them limit good offenses this season, and they put up a 40 bomb, Brady, a 40 bomb against this Chargers defense. I mean, that was nuts. Baker played great. Mike Evans, dude, balled out. I messed up with that. I was telling people to sit him a little bit. I mean,
he needs to average 83 yards a game over the next 3 games against the Cowboys, Panthers, and Saints to get 1,000. I think
you want him to get it so bad, don't you?
I think he's going to get it. I think it's a cool streak, so why not? Mike Evans is my guy.
We need to talk about Bucky Irving, dude. This guy is a superstar in the making, and I do think it'll be like a Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery type situation that they go with, which seems to work really well in Detroit. Might piss off some fantasy football owners, but Bucky Irving's legit. Rashad White is a very good third down back. They have depth in this offense.
I don't know how he fell under the radar in the draft so hard. I just remember watching Oregon football last year and being like, wow, like Bo Nix is good, but this offense right now is running through the running back, and Bucky Irving is a dog. Then he was like a 5th-round pick or something like that. I know running backs aren't the most valued position, but clearly he has been one of the most valuable Buccaneers this season, especially in lieu of the injuries that we saw to Godwin, to Evans. And I misspoke. Obviously, we still haven't seen Godwin back. But, I mean, Otton, those guys, Bucky Irving has been the most important to me.
Yeah, 100%. What I will say, the Bucs defense is concerning in a playoff matchup. They played great today against the Chargers. Antoine Winfield being out, hopefully he's back for the postseason, would be big for them. And on the Chargers side of things, not a good look. Not a good look. It seems like the loss from Kansas City last week, they didn't necessarily recover very well from that one because they didn't show up at all. We didn't get a Jim Harbaugh team performance where they ran the ball hard, they controlled the game clock. That did not happen at all. They got bullied in this performance, and it's concerning. They're going to be in the playoffs. I will say that.
Only the 6th seed, though. They looked like a lock to be 5 a couple weeks ago.
I think because 7 would play Buffalo, right? I think probably Denver will wind up being the 7th seed. I mean, they match up though next week.
Denver's the 5 right now, aren't they? Or no,
yeah,
Denver
has a tough schedule to close out.
Yeah.
So what I will say with the Chargers though, we always talk about how they're ahead of schedule, and I feel like that's the reason they're not there yet. The talent at quarterback is there. The scheme is there. I just don't think they have the pieces necessarily to compete. If they face a team like Buffalo, I think it gets ugly. Steelers, it could be an interesting game if they wind up getting that game. Houston could be interesting. Like, they could clip a team, but depending on the matchup, they could get absolutely routed.
Steelers-Chargers was a really tight game early on in the year before Justin Herbert got hurt right at the beginning of the second half, and I know that was Justin Fields, and this is Russell Wilson, but I think that could be an interesting matchup, especially if it was in LA, but we'll see. I mean, it looks like I kept talking about the Dolphins had a chance at that 7th seed. They blew it today. They're done. They're at Tua. Once again, that's another guy. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid on Tua. I wasn't sitting here telling you Tua's good all of a sudden, but I thought he had improved a little bit. Once again, in a big game, Tua just lays a complete egg, multiple interceptions, just a horrible.
No Tyreek Hill involvement.
Yeah, it was just brutal. And, I just don't know. Dolphins are stuck with him. They're going to have to find a way to make it work with Tua, but it's going to be a long, hard offseason, and I do think next year is going to be Mike McDaniel's last chance.
Exactly what I was just going to say. How do you run the same exact offense every single week? Like, they make no changes at all. It's in-breaking routes. It is outside zones. It is pitches. It's the same offensive play. I understand schemes, right? You run the same type of concept, stuff like that. Miami's offense looks like a copy and paste scheme, regardless of the defense they play. There looks like there's no adjustments on a weekly basis. And if a team figures out how to stop their in-breaking routes, Brady, they're cooked. We saw them stop the in-breaking routes for Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle left early, which didn't help, but they stopped those early. They never let the wide receivers for Miami get going. And when the wide receivers don't get going in Miami, it looks ugly. It does not look pretty at all.
Mike McDaniel deserves some blame, but I still think that the biggest factor here is Tua. And
no, he made horrible decisions. I was going to say that too. He made some horrible reads today.
To me, today what we saw, there was one specific play. We see evidence that I feel like Mike McDaniel literally has to babysit Tua and be like, hey, look, you're throwing this. This is going to be open. Make sure you're throwing this. This is the read you're making, because Tua is not a very cerebral quarterback. He's not a very physically gifted quarterback. But the play I'm talking about, Tua, we saw a lot of pundits talk so much about his accuracy, his anticipation. He takes the drop. There's a crosser going across the field, and it's supposed to be open, but the linebacker dropped into the zone. Tua stared straight at him and threw it right to the linebacker because that route is so often open. It's like predetermined reads are what I feel like comes from Tua, and that's because Mike McDaniel realizes he's handicapped by him, and this dude pulled off a heist on this organization. I don't know where they're going to go from here.
Look, I will say on the Texans side, they won. The offense wasn't fixed by any means.
CJ played.
Dolphins don't have a great defense either, and they kind of bullied that offensive line still. I think what I will say is that Houston needs to just get Nico and Collins more involved. It's going to be tough next week against Trent McDuffie. Trent McDuffie balled out this week, had a great performance.
Got a pick finally.
Finally, man. Tank Dell needs to step up. He has not been the same player this season. I understand the tough situation he's in, but he needs to be better. Joe Mixon, the wheels look like they're falling off for him. I don't know if it's necessarily run blocking or Mixon himself, but Mixon's not necessarily looking the same. What's your take on the Texans offense right now?
I mean, CJ Stroud played clean. It still hasn't gotten a whole lot better without Nico Collins. But I mean, at this point, the Texans their ceiling is the divisional round to me. They're not a threat to make conference championship weekend, but try and win another wild card game and build off of what you've done the last 2 seasons and make a few more pushes this offseason. Maybe draft a receiver even, because the defense is good. The defense has good players. Obviously, they've got the 2 edge rushers. They've got Derek Stingley. They've got guys in the back end. And they've got Christian Harris, who will be healthy at linebacker next year. But offensively, they just need more. And I'm not sure what that is, because they do have Joe Mixon in the backfield. They have a decent offensive line that's gotten worse throughout the season. I think that's another point of emphasis. Get another receiver, whether free agency or the draft, and get a better offensive line. And I think we'll see CJ Stroud back to more what he was his rookie year as opposed to what he's been this season. Because I still think CJ Stroud's a really good quarterback that's just dealing with a lot of it's a lack of cohesion. There's been injuries. There's been bad O-line play. He was obviously expecting Stephon Diggs to gradually fill a big role in this offense, and then he goes down with an injury. So it's been a lot of shuffling, and I just think CJ Stroud is not competent in the guys around him at the moment.
Yeah, but Vic mentions that they're going to make it work with Tua. He is what he is at this point. He'll put up big numbers with his weapons, good or bad competition. Second, they play somebody good, he stinks. I think McDaniel's a very good coach and they shouldn't fire him, but at the same time, he signed off on him long term. So if they end up letting him go to move off of Tua, that makes sense. Look, that's the NFL. You tie yourself to a quarterback, and a lot of guys that shouldn't get fired get fired. I mean, we both like Brian Dable. He tied himself to Daniel Jones, and he's not going to be back next season.
We can see it with Shanahan and Purdy in theory in the next year or two if they end up paying that guy. I really do believe we could see Shanahan have the Andy Reid career arc where he's underappreciated in a spot where he's consistently making it to big games but not really ever winning them. Then he goes somewhere else and just goes on a tear. We'll see.
All right, let's talk about the NFC West a little bit. The Packers took care of business, basically got up early from the start and never looked back against the Seahawks, who played better in the second half defensively, but offensively never got it going. Geno Smith got hurt, and now the Rams are tied for the division lead in the NFC West with 3 games to go. What are your initial takeaways from this game? Who's going to win the West? And Packers-wise, where are they looking at?
I think the Seahawks are cooked. They still have to play Minnesota next week. They finish off the season with the Rams, and I think they probably need to win both of those, and I don't think they will, especially with the game being in L.A. against the Rams. I do think that regardless, they have at the very least achieved where I thought they might. I think I had them 8-9 to start the season. They might end up overachieving a little bit, but I just, as a year one head coach who has made improvements on a defense, we didn't see it as much tonight, but has made improvements on a defense that had kind of limited personnel. And Pete Carroll obviously left because he didn't feel like this team could compete. I don't think a lot of people expected them to be serious competitors this season. And I think that people might not bring it up, and some fans in Seattle might just be cool running it back with Geno Smith next year. But I think they seriously have to think about their long-term future at quarterback, because this is a defense that's young, and in the next 2 years, maybe 3 years, it's going to start being a really good defense, I believe, especially with McDonald at the helm. But do you, in 3 years when that defense is really good, do you want 37-year-old Geno Smith leading the charge next year? Do you want 30?
I'll pass, Brady. I think I'll pass on that.
But the thing is, where do they go? Because Sam Howell looked absolutely terrible tonight when he came in. I know it's a short sample size. He didn't look great last year in Washington. I don't think they're going to be in a position to draft a quarterback. Do you give Geno one more year and then look for a QB in the draft next year? Do you look into a trade? I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. I think that's their biggest issue. The defense building, and they have weapons.
I know a guy. He's in Minnesota right now.
Honestly, that's a good fit. That is a good fit, and I pray they do that and not go the Justin Fields route or something like that.
Ooh, that would be rough. I think Darnold's a perfect fit for Seattle. They got the weapons in place. They got the running backs in place. They need a little bit more on the offensive line. They always have there. We'll see what they get, but I think Darnold's a really good fit there.
JSN's starting to come into his own.
Yes, he's their number one. I think he's better than DK.
Well, another interesting storyline I was about to say is, do they look to shop DK this offseason? And
they have in the past. They just never got anything done.
Team like the Patriots or like the Chargers doesn't get in on the T. Higgins. Do they pivot to DK Metcalf?
It would be interesting for sure to see. It definitely is a topic. What I'll say with the Green Bay Packers, though, Josh Jacobs is going to be the X factor for this team in the playoffs. Yep. I've watched this offense enough this season to kind of figure out how they excel, right? When Jordan Love, I think, is a good quarterback, but they need the running game to work in order for this offense to work. They work very well ahead of schedule. What do you say?
You don't want to put too much pressure on Love. That's the thing.
No, you don't. He's not like there yet. I think he's talented enough to potentially get there, but he's not there yet. If it's all on Jordan Love's shoulders, I don't think he can do it necessarily. If Josh Jacobs can control the game script on the ground, they can run play action off of it. That's where the Packers become really hard to beat. And that's like the upside we see in this team. Defensively, they played great today, but we know against better teams, they're not talented enough to limit them to what they did in Seattle tonight. On offense, they have to find a way to control the game script if they're going to go far in the postseason. Let's talk about the Seahawks, though. It's the offensive line's bad. Geno Smith, he leads the NFL the last 2 seasons in red zone turnovers. They move the ball well. They really do. They just shoot themselves in the foot, or one person shoots them in the foot every single time. Like I said, Sam Darnold's a good fit there next year. They have the roster to compete, so why not go get the veteran quarterback? think it'd be interesting to see. I know Stafford, obviously, could be on the market potentially this offseason. We'll see, but he'll never wind up going to Seattle, unfortunately. But they could look into some veteran quarterbacks, and I think a veteran quarterback is a good fit for them this offseason. And then on the Rams side of things, I think when you look at these two teams, you just have to love how the Rams match up with the Seahawks. They can run the ball well. They have two elite wide receivers to match those cornerbacks, and where honestly we've seen those elite wide receivers good match up very well against elite cornerbacks. And then you flip the side of the ball, the Rams have an elite pass rush. I'm willing to say they have an elite pass rush. They have young players on there they're getting there. Okay,
I'm gonna put them in the good category.
I'm gonna pipe down. They're in a good category. They're a good pass rush team. They can beat up a bad Seahawks offensive line and go take that division in Week 18. So I think the Rams are going to win that division. Easier schedule ahead, and then the Seahawks will be wound up in second place. We'll see what happens there.
They might not even get second. The Cardinals aren't dead, baby. The Cardinals aren't dead.
They're dead. Hey, we both said put a fork in them last week. Don't you dare switch up.
No. I said all throughout the week they had a very, very slight breath of life still. It's 99% chance they're not doing nothing, but they're not dead yet. I didn't hear no bell.
All right, I do want to kind of touch on Cowboys and Panthers. Bryce Young did not look good today. This was a big step backwards for the Bryce Young Panthers.
Right. It was a step back from what we've seen over the last month or so. And I do think that Micah Parsons in the pass rush, Odigizua got in there, had a strip sack. I think that they were able to disrupt him and have their way against this Cowboys offensive line. But Bryce didn't look good. And on the flip side, Cooper Rush actually looked really good, probably the best that he has since he took over for Dak. And honestly,
it's that Rico Dowdle effect.
If the Cowboys had just won one or two of these close games, even if they had just won this past Monday night, they'd be on like a 4 or 5 game winning streak right now and still like have an outside chance of being a wild card, even with Rush. But they just fell a little bit too far behind the 8 ball. That's not going to happen. And honestly, winning these games might be bad for them. But, I do think they're on a crash course for drafting Ashton Genty. And I think regardless of where they end up.
Don't end the Rico Dowdle train, bro. We need him back.
Ashton Genty, man.
Listen, all offseason, I'm going to be riding the fact that I was the Rico Dowdle truther from week 1. And look where he's gotten us now. He's been a monster. He's got 3 straight performances over 100 yards. Just go get like a third down back. Just sprinkle a third down back in there with him, and I'll be happy. If they draft Genty, I'm going to be really sad because Rico Dowdle's season's over. And
you can the two of them get curious, though.
It does. It's probably honestly the best fit. It really is. But for hearts, I will say with Bryce Young, though, I am a little concerned. Now, he played very good the last few weeks. And then he played bad this week against a game that they were favored. They were actually favored in this game heading into it. And he laid an egg. It's concerning because he is the face of the franchise. They're going to put more talent around him next season. Are they just going to be going in circles going forward with this Bryce Young experience where it's a roller coaster? They're stuck with him for another 2 years. I mean, I don't know. I do like what Bryce Young has done. He's obviously going to be the starter next season. Next year is the make or break year for him. It really is.
100%. And I mean, pretty much the return on investment you find out in those first 3 years in these quarterbacks. So if he's not improved next year or he's just mediocre, I'm fine with cutting ties. I think that the guy they need to take in the draft, I just talked about the Cowboys taking Genty. I think the Panthers need to take Ted McMillan out of Arizona. I think he's a great receiver for this offense. If you have him and Leggett, who I do think will end up becoming a good player, and then one more year of veteran Adam Thielen out there, I think they could maybe make a little bit of noise, maybe a 7 to 8 win year. And at that point for Bryce Young, are probably locked in for year 4.
Yeah, we'll slightly touch on some other games around the NFL real quick at the end of our show. The Bengals took care of business against the Titans. Wasn't necessarily pretty at all times. The defense continued to have lapses
offensively
on that side of the ball. Do you think if the Bengals wind up going 8-9 per se, Zach Taylor's back next season?
No, I think he's gone. The literal only way that he is making it back is if they somehow make it to at least a divisional and probably the conference championship. I think otherwise ownership is pretty set on finding a new guy. And hopefully, like I've been saying, it's Joe Brady. I think it'd be awesome.
Joe Brady's getting a job next season. There's no way he's not.
It should be in Cincy. It just makes too much sense to me. But I mean, the Bengals have a very winnable game next year. next year. Next week against the Browns, I could put them at 7-8. Then it becomes their playoffs pretty much. They've got the Broncos and the Steelers those last 2 games, so we'll see what happens. They're not dead yet. I don't think they'll be dead after next week, but they definitely, I think, will at the end of the year have to look back and be like, man, if only we had won a couple more of those one-score games. The Commanders game, the Patriots game, week 1, both Ravens games. I mean, the Bengals
that should be enough alone that to where he's lost so many games to start the season and dug in this hole that he should be gone because of that.
Bengals are sitting there at 6-8. They could be 10-4 right now, in all honesty, and they just aren't because the defense hasn't been up to par and Zach Taylor hasn't been up to par, and that's just the truth.
100%. I know you don't like talking about the Jets because of their quarterback. I will say this. Whoever gets Devontae Adams next season is still getting an elite receiver, dude. He is nuts still. Did you watch him today?
They might have had like their final masterclass performance together today, honestly.
But, dude, Devontae Adams still has multiple years left ahead of him. This guy is still a dog. I mean, the catches he was making and the routes he's running at his age are just so good.
He's not a top 5 guy anymore, but he's still a very good receiver. And he's still – I'd put him on the mid to lower end of wide receiver ones in the league right now, but he is still really, really good. And, again, I've touched on how washed I think the quarterback is, and maybe a change of scenery could do him some good. I don't know. It feels like if he goes to the Saints, if he decides to leave the Jets, Derek Carr would be a lateral move, but we'll see what happens.
What about the receiver on the other side, Brian Thomas Jr., man? This guy's going to be special. He's going to be very special.
Today. He did it with freaking Mac Jones. Imagine if Trevor can just put it together next year. Another guy that is make or break for is Trevor Lawrence next season. And,
not necessarily though, because he got that bag.
It's got to be though, man. Like I'm not saying they'll move on.
No, from a media perspective, yes, it's
if he can't get anything next year, like we just know what he is at that point. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand that, but yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. has been very impressive for me this year, and I mean. I don't want to go ahead and say like he's over. I mean, he's over Marv right now for sure.
That's Bavic's team.
What do you say?
So that's Bavic's team, the Jags.
Is it?
Yeah.
He just actually typed. Devontae Adams, excellent receiver. As Brady said prior, guy doesn't know how to choose teams very well. Hey, he's running out of quarterbacks if Rodgers retires to go to, and Derek Carr, who knows what the Saints are going to do. I do want to talk about the Saints and the Commanders real quick. Commanders, it was interesting how that game went. I mean, they went down to the wire there. The offense didn't take care of business like we expected them to. The Saints are a tough out just because they have a lot of veterans playing for pride at this point. Basically, who knows how much longer they're going to be playing the league. And Jake Haener sucks. Spencer Rattler wasn't much better. What do you think of the Commanders winning this one?
So Rattler almost led the comeback, but I mean, the Commanders, they are what they are. I think they've had one of the weakest schedules in the league, especially out of playoff teams. And if they do get in, I mean, this team is nothing more than a first-round exit. I think they're pretty fraudulent. And I think that we have a
7 seed too, so they'll get Philly or Detroit.
Right. And I think that we have enough sample size to say that Jaden Daniels has slowed down over the last month, 2 months. And I'm not saying he's been bad, but people were putting him in talks he just didn't belong in those first 6-7 games. Hey, I would take him over Jalen Hurts. I would take him over Baker Mayfield. He's having the best rookie season of the last 10 years. He's better than CJ Stroud was last year. All that was insanity. And honestly, he still could end up winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Right now, I feel like it might be Bo Nix. I don't feel like either one of them have been great. Bo wasn't good today. It should be Brock Bowers.
I was going to talk about that game next. Bo was bad today.
If Justin Jefferson or Puka Nacua can't win Rookie of the Year, I don't know if Brock Bowers can with the way that it's voted on, but to me, he's a deserving candidate. Jaden Daniels, though, we'll see. I mean, really, all he's got is Terry McLaurin, to be honest. We'll see if he gets more help and takes a leap in year 2, but I'm still banking on he's at best going to be the third best QB from this class when it's all said and done and looked back on.
Interesting. Let's talk about Bo Nix. Okay. This was the Bo Nix we got to start the season today. It was bad, really bad football. He wasn't reading defenses. He had happy feet in the pocket. We saw 3 interceptions against a bad Colts defense. He did finish with 3 touchdowns there, and a lot of them were schemed up for him. I mean, they were on upset alert against the Colts, and they would have given the Colts a lot of life if they wound up losing that game. And on the other side of things, I mean, Anthony Richardson is good for a weekly 4 for 14 to start the day. Absolutely disgusting stat line. I'm going to go out and say this. Anthony Richardson won't be the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts next season. I don't know what they're going to do. AR is not the answer, dude. This guy is not an NFL quarterback.
The answer, but I do think he's going to get the starting nod again next year. They might bring in someone to be competing with him in camp or something like that. It could even be a Fields, which, again, I'm not big on Fields at all. But I think, I mean, at this point, he's right at, I think, like a full season's worth of starts. I think they're going to give him a little more time. I'm not sure.
Like Steichen, though, we've seen the last 2 years how competitive this guy is. Like, he benched his franchise quarterback for Joe Flacco.
You got to think, though, Irsay and Ballard, they're not going to go for that this early on. And maybe they should. I was a big Anthony Richardson fan coming out of college, but he just simply hasn't shown enough. I do think they're going to give him more time, though.
Like, the pieces, like, they have a nice wide receiver group right there in Indy. Jonathan Taylor, nice line. What do you say?
So the O-line, I don't think is terrible either. Like, they haven't been good.
It's not. They just need a quarterback. Like, if they had a quarterback and a better – obviously the defense has its own problems. They struggle against the run, the pass, everything. But they just need a quarterback, dude. They're a quarterback away, really. Like Sam Darnold, another guy that could be interesting for them. I know that it's not ideal with the Anthony Richardson situation, but I mean, at what point do you give up on a guy that has a 50% completion percentage in a year sample size? I mean, that's not very good, Brady. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback with that low of a completion percentage in my time of watching football.
I've got friends at work, they'll remain unnamed, but I've got friends at work that think that Anthony Richardson's better than Drake May.
Really?
Yes, and they're like adamant about it. And one of the number one arguments I get, Anthony Richardson beat Drake May head to head. Just wait. That's one thing I do want to talk about real quick. If Drake May gets T. Higgins and Travis Hunter, just watch out.
It'll be nice for sure. But hey, we really appreciate you guys tuning into our Week 15 overreactions video. 50%, 1950. Hey, that's when they were throwing the pop passes. They're running Army and Navy offenses. What I'll say is this. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. Drop a comment down below your reactions to Week 15. Hit that subscribe button for more content. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Brady Chat, loyal viewers of the show. Respect.